Greetings, YouTube. It's actually starting to get warmer here. It's kind of amazing. One of the things I noticed over the years is that players can sometimes be confused by humor. And I don't mean humor generated by a GM within the context of the game. I can mean humor played upon people within the game itself, the characters. Now, as a GM, I have used humor in the past because I thought it was entertaining. In a post-apocalyptic setting, I set up the characters with a bunch of trees that were glowing blue and humming as they set up camp. It made them very nervous. They picked up their camp and moved in the night just to avoid camping near the blue glowing trees that hummed. And I waited, and I hoped, and I prayed, until finally one of my players said, "I wonder why the trees are humming." And I replied, "Because they didn't know the words." Yes, I set that entire thing up just for a joke. Now, what I'm talking about with humor is that humor within the context of the game world itself. I have used this in two ways. One, I've used it because I thought it was entertaining. For example, throwing a fake torch, ever-burning torch, at someone as a joke within the game. It's a goblin they encountered. He says, "Hey, Clint!" Chucks a torch at him. Clint freaks out because the torch flying at him, hits him in the chest. Goblin walks up, picks up the torch by its head because it's an illusionary spell that doesn't actually produce heat, shakes his head, and as he hands the thing to Clint and says, "Joke never old," and walks away. And that caught the players off guard that this goblin was being humorous, that he was cracking a joke. In another particular setting, my character picked up Ring of Invisibility. I can't remember. I don't even remember if it was appropriate for the character class, but the GM wasn't what you'd call well experienced, I guess. So I ended up with the Ring of Invisibility somehow. And the first thing I did with the Ring of Invisibility was start pulling pranks on my fellow adventurers. So within the context of the game, I'm describing what my character does, you know, like taking someone's clothes while they're in the bath and things like that. And the GM thought it was amazing that I was that creative. But I was thinking, if I had a Ring of Invisibility, this is what I would do! Let's face it, you've got a Ring of Invisibility. You can do anything you want and not be noticed. Well, harder to notice. And when someone's in a bathtub, it's not hard to sneak up on them. And in most cases, that caught people off guard. Now, I ended up having a reputation for being someone that would put humor into games as a GM and as a player. And I've used that to my advantage, where I put a goofy kind of character into a court scene, and it was the player characters had created a town of their own, Crystaldale. And Companion to the Crystal Star was the name of their adventuring group. And he's very overblown and thinks of himself as being very important. He's a very small man, very delusional. And he was, in fact, delusional. He really did think he was a very important man. What the characters didn't know is that he was a gate, a walking, talking, breathing gate for a demonic being. Of course, he didn't know it either. He thought he had just had some incredible good luck recently and suddenly found himself rolling in money. In actuality, he had been used and had been influenced that he needed to speak to the people that were in charge of this particular place because they had gone out to great lengths to prevent evil people from settling in their town. In fact, if you wanted to become a member of the city, you had to have your alignment checked because they weren't taking any chances. So a demon used this guy as a stealth bomb and snuck him into their court, whereupon he transformed into a nasty thing, and it was a terrorist attack, essentially. One of my players actually got very upset because I did this very goofy character that she had laughed at suddenly became this very demonic thing. But I used my own behavior against them by setting up their preconception and then turning it on its head. So, I asked my viewers in the RPG Brigade, have you ever used humor within the context of the game? Have you ever used humor as a GM? And have you ever used a trait that you yourself have set up against your players at a later date? I'm interested in knowing.